Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Santiago here, on with Adam Lemeries, Kobe Lambis from the Podium Finish, and Ben Schneider. We encourage everyone to participate in the chat room. We're already seeing a couple comments coming in. We'll love to share them on the air as we get to those racing topics. And a big special thank you to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air. Link in the video description to support the Grid Network and invest in our future as we continue to expand on our motorsports coverage. And overall, I see one comment from a day in the life, not thrilled with the way this race weekend went, especially I think as we talk about what happened over in Japan, Suzuka's Japan, where we saw potential what could have been a very nasty accident. Thankfully, it didn't happen, but it really, I think, got a lot of people upset.
Yeah, a lot of people upset. Shortly after the red flag was brought out in the Japanese Grand Prix, attention turned to a very upset Pierre Gasly. He was yelling that he could have been killed on the radio and swearing too. Confusion turned into shock and anger once we learned why he was so bent out of shape. Video footage of Gasly's onboard emerged, showing a recovery tractor on the track under poor conditions. Gasly barely saw this vehicle. This all happened at Suzuka, the same track that lost Jules Bianchi under similar conditions. It was an egregious incident that only worsened once multiple video angles became available. Lap 1, we had a standing start with everyone on the intermediate tire compound. Carlos Sainz aquaplaning and crashed into the barrier at turn 12, spun onto the edge of the track and loosened a tire wall barrier with an advertisement. Several cars nearly collided with Sainz's car coming back onto the track, including Gasly, but Gasly collected the sign, damaging the front nose and wing of the car. The first lap was completed under the safety car, and Gasly pitted to get a new front wing. On the second lap, the safety car, Max Verstappen, and the entire field passed the recovery tractor on the track. The only two out at the moment were Sainz and Albon, who went out with gearbox issues. Gasly attempted to catch up to the line of cars, passed the tractor, and avoided a marshal who was on the track, helping recover. Sainz's vehicle, the red flag was called, and all cars came to the pit. Outrage was seen all over the internet as drivers and teams were being very critical of what happened, especially Lando Norris and Sergio Perez. They were one of the first two to sound off on this. And the truly heartbreaking part of this all, the father of Jules Bianchi posts on Instagram, "No respect for the life of the driver, no respect for Jules' memory." Incredible. After Jules Bianchi's fatal crash, the incident in Turkey in 2020, Monza this year, and Suzuka again, how disturbing is it that the FIA has not learned their lesson yet and ultimately bringing back awful memories to Bianchi? His family.
It's very disturbing, and it just makes you wonder, has the FIA, which many see as sort of the premier governing body of motorsports, one of the motorsports governing bodies that go for safety at almost all costs, is just not learning from this mistake. What got me really upset too was how during the coverage we saw a couple commentators trying to place blame on Gasly. There's none of that. No. The fact is this. Gasly, he was going faster because just like any situation, if you're behind under safety car, red flag conditions come in, which we weren't aware if the drivers knew about that. And see, that tractor there, that could have been very ugly if he had lost it because it was wet, poor conditions. The camera could barely see him. But what really got me upset too was then we saw Vettel pass the tractor, Daniel Ricciardo pass the tractor, and then video of Max Verstappen following the safety car and the tractor was there. This was not just Gasly that had an encounter. The entire field had to go by this. Did we really not learn anything? I mean, yes, those other cars that were under the safety car, I think the FIA really needs to look into, do we need to make this where we know we got a red flag coming, just wait until the entire field is in the pits? Because I found it's just very unacceptable. I found it unacceptable how they try to, oh, well, it's different situation. Gasly trying to, no, simple. If we have a car and needs a safety vehicle, especially under these poor conditions, and you're looking at potentially throwing a red flag, wait till you throw the red flag and then get the safety vehicle out there, the recovery vehicle, to get the stricken car. It was just really awful to see. And I just, the memory of when we lost Jules at the Japanese Grand Prix, right before that race, I had shown a friend of mine the movie Rush, where we all know the story of that movie between Lada and Hunt. We watched the Japanese Grand Prix, then later on we know what happened to Jules. Just not a good way for the race weekend to start off.
Yeah, and Joe, I believe there was even footage from, I guess Sainz is on board. I think it was the Ferrari, and there was a marshal attending to his car. And again, the field was just speeding by in awful conditions. So I mean, it wasn't even just for tractor. Obviously, that was the one that got the most attention for, very good and serious reasons. Because this can never happen again. I don't understand how it happened here. I mean, and it happened at Suzuka. I mean, that's the other thing. It's just mind-boggling. I mean, if all the tracks where we should know better, for it to happen here is absolutely unacceptable. And I have to say, Karun Chandok and Paul di Resta know infinitely more than I do about the ins and outs of Formula One. They've driven those cars. They know what it's like. But I'm with you, Joe. I did not get their analysis at all. I wonder, if they only had part of the information at the time, or everybody was still trying to process it. But there's no way Gasly should be blamed for that incident. Drivers, all the time try to catch up to the back end of the pack under the safety car. And it doesn't, even if you want to say, well, maybe Gasly didn't need to be going that fast, that doesn't answer the question to why the tractor was out there. So I don't really have too much to add other than what you said. I think you put it very well. I mean, there's not much more to say, in all honesty. I mean, it's just simply unacceptable, and it cannot happen again. We've seen what happens when something goes wrong, when it does happen. And I know the cars are safer than they've ever been. I know we have the Halo now. I don't know if the Halo would have saved Jules Bianchi's life. But, we don't need to find that out. We don't need to have another accident to see if that would be the case or not. The tractor just should not have been out there at all. And I hope that a situation like this never happens again, because it isn't even the first time since Suzuka 8 years ago that we've run into a controversy like this. And it's just absolutely disgraceful.
Well said, Joe and Ben. Absolutely disgraceful to see this happening again at Suzuka. And my heart definitely goes out to Jules Bianchi's father and his entire family, because I can't imagine how they felt seeing this happen almost again. Like it's a case of deja vu. But thankfully, a lucky escape this time, and nothing happened to Pierre Gasly or any of the other drivers. And as you saw during the race, the F1 cars had the flashing red lights behind them, and you come up on the tractor, and like you honestly wouldn't have even known it was there unless you like looked up at the very last minute. So if Gasly lost control of his car, went over to the left, I don't even want to imagine what would have happened. And as you guys perfectly put it, absolutely disgraceful. This is an incident that cannot happen again. And I also don't understand why Sky Sports F1 was blaming Gasly for this incident. It really doesn't make any sense, and you can't really put that on Pierre Gasly at all. The FIA definitely have to look at themselves in the mirror and find out what happened here, and hopefully we'll learn more when they do an investigation. And the FIA announced that they'll investigate Gasly for going too fast under the red flag condition. To be more specific, many saw this as the FIA trying to blame Gasly and cover their bases. Wash their hands of it, like I've done nothing wrong at all. Last weekend, we discussed the handling of the post-race penalties. The FIA changed the race control structure after the Michael Masi Abu Dhabi mess. However, after this weekend, Singapore, and confusion on when the race ended, it looks like we'll have a lot more of the same. Does the FIA and Formula One need to clean up race control and procedures before they turn off their growing fan base?
Well, Kobe, before I answer that, I do want to get to a couple of comments here. I see our own Casey Campbell saying, I saw the best race this weekend. I guess that was in response to a day in the life's comment earlier. Of course, Casey was at the ARCA season finale in Toledo, a very dramatic race on both the Drivers' Championship side and the Owners' Championship. So make sure you stay tuned to Grid Live Encore tomorrow night right here on Grid Network. Casey will have some exclusive interviews to share with us and give his take on what happened between Jesse Love and Sammy Smith in the fight for the Owners' Championship, and of course Nick Sanchez and Daniel Dye on the driver's side of things. A day in the life saying as well, I cannot imagine if something bad happened, the world of hurt F1 would be in. Absolutely. Like I said, there's not too much more to add here. It's pretty self-explanatory. And Kobe, to get to, again, the race procedure and the start procedure and everything, I mean, as well as I do, we're on the East Coast of the United States of America. The race started, or was scheduled to start, at least at 1 a.m. And with the time windows, if we didn't have any delays, it would be over at 3. With the delay, with the rain and the weather and everything, it was over at 4 a.m. Eastern time. I'm a dedicated, passionate follower of this sport, and I stayed up the entire night. And it was, I must admit, I was sitting there questioning what I was doing at 2:30 in the morning, when all we were hearing was, we're going to restart the race under safety car conditions, and it's going to be a rolling start. Okay, never mind, the start is suspended, and we don't have a time procedure for when we're going to get back. And then you have all the chaos and controversy that came after the checkered flag, which I know we'll get to in just a little bit later on as well. But, at some point, you need to make a decision. Like, either we're going to race in the rain or we're not. Either we're going to utilize our intermediate or wet tires or not. I think the best way to clear off standing water is to get 20 Formula One cars out there doing laps under the safety car. I guess it would have been 18 or whatever it was, after, the incidents on the opening lap. Get those cars out there to push the standing water away. You can run some laps under the safety car. That's not hardly unprecedented. We've seen that before. Ideally, the rain's lightening up a little bit, the track conditions will improve. Then we can go racing, and you can even have the drivers all come to the pits and change onto the intermediate tires. And when we got the race, the short race that we got, I thought we saw some pretty entertaining racing, actually. I thought there were a couple of passes, a couple of daring moves that, at the bare minimum, those fans in Japan got yesterday or today or whenever, the date. I guess the date is still Sunday here in the States, but they at least got something that the fans of Belgium and Spa last year didn't even get that. So at the bare minimum, we got a race, and we were able to legitimately say we went motor racing this time. And then we threw it all away again with the controversy of whether or not Verstappen was actually the champion. Are we awarding full points? So there's a lot that Formula One and the FIA have to clean up, especially considering the growing fan base, especially here in the United States. There's a race in Vegas next year that's going to be starting at the exact same time. There might be some fans that are maybe trying this, 1 a.m. start time out. If this was their first 1 a.m. race, I can't imagine that they're going to be super excited to do it again come time for Vegas next year, which is supposed to be the big race that's going to continue to grow the sport here in the United States of America. So there's a lot to sort out, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory at this point.
I really like what you said, Ben, about the start of the race. Last weekend, after Singapore, we discussed about why doesn't F1 tell all the drivers, you must start on the wet tires so we race on time rather than these delays. After the red flag, FIA, F1, everyone must start on the wet tires. We saw that. We saw Vettel, Latifi make those pit stops, gain a ton of position, then everyone else making pit stops. Schumacher hoping for a safety car or something, never turned out. Overall, like you said, I think it was pretty good racing, but just wasting the time, waiting and waiting. We talk about Formula One, we could race in the rain. Well, why aren't we racing in the rain? If you're concerned about the safety of the drivers at the start, put them on wet tires. If Carlos Sainz was on full wet tires, would he have spun out? I think we may still have gotten a safety car because of Alex Albon going out. But like you said, the best way to keep the track clear, have all the cars running. That would have just kept it clear, kept the race going. And here's the thing. Last year was Spa. Spa and Suzuka Japan, those are two tracks where everyone talks about looking forward to each and every year. Those two have been around the counter for a long time. Spa last year had that unfortunate race, no race situation. I was afraid we were looking at that here in Suzuka Japan, over 200 in attendance. And like you said, for everyone that was told, oh, you got to watch this race, it hasn't been on the calendar for the last few years because of the pandemic. Then we waited around a couple of hours until finally we got going. It just doesn't sit right, especially for the fans sitting in the rain. I mean, Ben, we covered a very wet Portland race weekend. We know that's asking a lot for the fans to turn out and see a race. It'll be really interesting to see what happens next year. I think the fans will come back at the end. They did saw a good race, including a photo finish, which none of us really saw because of the television cameras. But overall, I have to agree with everything you said and a comment from the chat room as well. I wanted to stay up to watch the F1 Japan race, but I went to sleep because of the longer delays. Like you said, Ben, if someone had woken up, would they really want to wake up this early for the race next year?
Yeah. Well, real quick before Kobe comes back in, just want to say hi to Ian. I know him personally, and it's good to see him in the chat room. And also, I almost did the exact same thing because I really did just think to myself, is this just going to be Spa all over again? And if so, what's the point of me staying up till 4 a.m. to find out that Max Verstappen is going to win the race by default again? And I'm glad you brought that point up, Joe, as well. You know, we haven't raced in Japan for the last 2 years because of the pandemic. Imagine if those fans had showed up to the track and gotten that same kind of farce of a quote unquote race that the fans of Belgium got last year. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible that we've continued to do this and learn absolutely nothing from, prior mistakes. I mean, it's not unprecedented to, run some laps under the safety car. I mean, we have tools, we have technology that can mitigate these issues that we're facing with the weather. And yet we continue to shoot ourselves in the foot as Formula One fans, watching this and watching them not seem to have any idea what they're doing.
Yeah. Excuse me. There's a lot of things the FIA and Formula One will have to sort out. But I like the point you brought up about the great battles that the fans got to see a lot more than they got to see at Spa last year. They actually got to see some incredible battles. Unfortunately, as you mentioned about the television direction, we didn't get to see it. But I'm at the very least, I'm glad the fans got to see it. I was confused at the end because Max Verstappen already taken the checker flag. He's going one, and then there was like a delayed call saying like Max Verstappen has won the race. I'm like, he already had crossed the line and taken the checker flag, and then this incredible battle between I believe it was Alonso and Vettel coming to the line. We didn't get to see that, and the thing is, they were talking about how great the battle was, and they're not even showing it on the TV screen. So that part I don't understand. All just a comedy of errors, as we like to say, and hopefully they'll make an honest effort to improve moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely, Kobe. And that was the other thing. Just getting with the theme of the Sky coverage, I went back and ESPN 2 re-aired the race this afternoon. I guess for all the normal people who aren't crazy like me and actually stayed up until 1 a.m. and through 4 a.m. watching this race live. People watching on tape delay, and I missed it last night. Apparently, Crofty said Charles Leclerc comes through to get his 12th win of the season. So I mean, there was just a comedy of errors on the Sky broadcast, and he was stumbling over his call, and I can't even hardly blame him because they shifted to Verstappen very last minute after he crossed the line. They missed the photo finish between Alonso and Vettel for whatever that was. I think it was 6th place. And Ian bringing up a good point there as well. It's like watching a NASCAR race with the production level that we saw this week from the world feed. So absolutely, to put an end to this question, there's a lot that needs to be addressed going forward, especially given how the fan base has continued to boom here in the United States. Well, let's continue talking about this and get into the actual race itself. It was, quite frankly, an embarrassing weekend, and it kind of continued for the FIA and Formula One with what essentially only ended up being a sprint race. As we've talked about, many anticipated a repeat of Spa 2021 with no race. And while we did end up getting a short race at the bare minimum, we did see even more confusion. Max Verstappen got over 50% of the race completed, in this case, 27 laps or more. Rules showed that he should have been awarded 19 points for the race not being 75% completed. However, at the end of it, Verstappen was awarded the full points and crowned World Drivers' Champion. He was confused, F1 TV was confused, and Chris Medlin was adamant that he was still 1 point shy of clinching it. However, the rulebook apparently stated that full points would be awarded since the race was not suspended. There was also confusion on whether or not the race was over when Max started his last lap. Last year brought drama and controversy. This year has brought confusion and what feels like another human error in understanding the rules. So, Joe, I'll go to you first on this one. Is this worse than last year's championship deciding race at Abu Dhabi? And again, is this another area where the FIA have to look at updating the sporting code?
Yes, this is. I mean, It should be clearly, Max Verstappen moment to shine, beat the world champion, celebrate. And instead, he was so confused. He was like, people are telling me I'm not the world champion. No, you are the world champion. Go sit in this room where there was this big couch and a screen wall. And you could sort of see the look on his face. He couldn't really enjoy it. He was confused. Like, am I the world champion? I mean, the commentators for F1 TV, the F1 streaming, they kept talking about he's not going to clinch the championship. He's not going to clinch the championship. And yet it all becomes down to this one rule where since the FIA didn't suspend the race and the race ended full points, after Abu Dhabi, we talked about we need to see some clearance in the rules, especially with the safety car. I think now the FIA, they really need to just go through all the rules, make it clear, not just for the teams, but for the fans and media too, because if everyone had known, hey, this is really big. Sergio Perez, if he gets around Charles Leclerc, he will allow Verstappen to get the championship. We didn't have that. We saw it was a great battle for second place, but just informing the fans so they know what was going on. That was just unfortunate that, we missed out on that. Can you just imagine just any type of scenario where a sport where you don't realize this is a championship winning or losing pass, move, play. And then you find out, oh, it was because of a penalty and nobody knew about it, not even the announcers, who a lot of people look for as the primary source of information besides Formula One themselves. It really just made it where I just couldn't believe staying up this late to see this confusion. Poor Max Verstappen, yes, he's going to go down still as a world champion more deservedly than any of the controversy from last year. People have split on last year still. I'm really confident he's going to go out there and still outscore Charles Leclerc. So if anybody says, oh, he didn't wrap it because there was still 1 point, I think he's going to still get more than that 1 point difference by the United States. It was just something else. It was just a big mess.
Yeah, big mess is the perfect way to describe it. And that was a really crazy sequence of events. There at the end, we're thinking we're just celebrating a Max Verstappen victory, and then all of a sudden we hear he's the world champion, and people are like confused. Max and his team are very excited, and people are like, "Wait, what? That's not how this is supposed to work. That wasn't in the script." At first, I'm thinking, "Oh my goodness, did they just pull a Steve Harvey or something?" Because this was the I don't even know how to describe what it was like watching this last night. I thought they were going to end up being wrong and having to come back and apologize to Max's team that they messed up here. But I guess we need to read the FIA rule book a little closer. But more likely, I think they really need to clarify the rules because the rules are really just muddy and all of that. Trying to understand all of this jargon that you see in the rule book. I don't even know what to say next. To be honest with you guys, it was just a really confusing sequence of events there at the end of the race. Yeah, but we know now Max Verstappen is a two-time Formula One world champion, and I guess that's the only thing that really matters. At the end of the day, it was just really strange how confusing that was at the end.
Yeah, and I see Ian's continuing to participate in chat room. We appreciate that. I think I answered his first question, and he says we got news about the Stewart Haas cars with communication during the Roval race, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit later on here. I would have to guess. I don't have Twitter pulled up right now. I'm not sure, but
I know what's going on with that.
Probably talking about the 41 blocking for the 14 on the last lap. Is that what it is?
Oh, yes. I know we'll talk about NASCAR in a little bit, but I'll just read the statement that NASCAR just put out. NASCAR is reviewing data, video, and radio transmissions from the 41 car Cole Custer. Following this incident on the backstretch during the final lap, NASCAR will communicate the results of the review early this week. Any potential penalties will not affect the round of 8 fields. So Chase Briscoe will indeed advance, and they're not going to penalize Chase Briscoe for, I guess, Cole Custer being the perfect wingman for him on the backstretch there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that seems like team orders to me, but at the same time, you can't win super speedway racing without some sort of team orders and working together in the draft. So that's a very fine line to try to police. I think it has to be very blatant, like, intentionally bringing out a caution like MWR did in 2013 if they're going to put the hammer down on that. So we'll see. Something interesting to monitor here as we continue to work through the show. But we'll keep our eyes on that as we continue on here. But we still have more to talk about on the F1 side of things. Thankfully, like we mentioned, the weather did improve to get us a short race. Verstappen pulled away and absolutely dominated. Behind him was a battle between Ferrari's Charles Leclerc and his Red Bull teammate Sergio Perez. Now on the final lap, Leclerc locked up, missed the final chicane, entered ahead of the Red Bull, re-entered the track ahead of the Red Bull, and eventually blocked Perez, resulting in a 5-second time penalty, which demoted him to third, promoted Perez up to second. Esteban Ocon finished ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Vettel in a photo finish stayed ahead of a hard-charging Fernando Alonso for P6. Russell ended up 8th, Latifi 9th, and Norris 10th to round out the points. Now, Alpine got around McLaren in the battle for P4 in the Constructors' Championship, kind of a battle for the best of the rest, a battle we'll be tracking the entire rest of the season here, and a lot of money on the line for these teams. So, Kobe, I'll go to you first on this one. Did Alpine prove a point and redeem themselves for their shortcomings in Singapore?
Oh yeah, Ben. I absolutely think Alpine redeemed themselves. And when this race started, and we knew it was going to be a wet start, I was thinking I'm really liking Alpine's chance on the pre-race show yesterday. Myself and Joshua Birch were saying that if it rains, we think Alpine's going to have a really good race. Or we even thought they might even have a chance for a podium or a win if something really crazy happened at the front of the field. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but still a really good points day for both Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso. Alpine's carrying a lot of momentum right now, especially with the announcement of Pierre Gasly coming in. I know Gasly and Ocon is going to be a really fun duo to watch next year and in the years beyond for the Alpine team. But if I'm them, the French team, I have to feel really happy with how things went at Suzuka.
Yeah, I feel Alpine, with everything going Suzuka, considering the bad luck they had in Singapore, you have to feel really good about themselves. That last lap pass, that's just part of racing. Nothing for Fernando Alonso to be dejected over. Go out there, Circuits of America. I think they have another opportunity there. That track, I think, is going to suit their car better than McLaren. And overall, I think Alpine, they're really going to, I think, start to potentially pull away from McLaren. McLaren, it just seems like they're just struggling. Daniel Ricciardo did not get the points, coming up short of the top 10. Lando Norris, he pitted later to get another set of intermediate tires, started coming up. Just something about that team does not seem to be 100% there. Comment in the chat room about F1. Do you know Nick DeVries joined AlphaTauri in 2023? Dimas, definitely, of course, we talked about this yesterday on our Grid Live wrap-up show, and definitely thank you for the comment as well, because we love hearing from everyone. So we encourage everyone to be sure to comment, like. But yeah, Alpine, I think they're going to start looking really excited, especially for United States, COTA, Mexico, those long straightaways, and then the rest of the season.
And of course, Demas will continue tracking how the grid shapes up for next year. I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about Logan Sargent and his prospects for that Williams seat on the Encore show throughout the rest of the year, so stay tuned for that. Now, when it was all said and done, Max Verstappen did get his 12th win of 2022 and is now a two-time Formula One world champion. While there was messy execution from the FIA and F1 in updating the championship picture, he no doubt has earned it this season. As we've been saying, it was only a matter of time before he clinched it, and he's likely to continue to earn more wins and extend his lead as the season comes to a close. So, Joe, Kobe, very simple. What are your thoughts on Max Verstappen's 2022 championship season?
Well deserved. That team, Red Bull, great car. You put Max Verstappen there, great talent. He earned this. Even with all the confusion going on, still, he's going to silence anyone that's speculating he didn't earn it yet. I think he's going to go out there, potentially win the United States Grand Prix, and to just really make it clear, if you want to contend for a championship, Red Bull, Max Verstappen, they're the number one team, the number one driver. You're going to have to go out there, beat them. And Max Verstappen, he is just phenomenal. What a great season, up to, I believe, now 11 wins this year, getting closer to that record. He can still do it because we have the two races in North America, Brazil, and then Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, I think it's been a wonderful season for Max Verstappen. You definitely have to bow to him because this has been such an incredible season for Verstappen and the Red Bull team. I know a lot of people are disappointed after last year's incredible championship battle, between Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. Unfortunately, where we don't really get those championship battles often, which made last year so special. This year, absolute domination. Nobody could touch Max Verstappen. It looked like during the early portions of the season that we were going to see a battle between Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen. We were hoping that it would go all the way down to the end, but unfortunately, it didn't. It doesn't always work that way. And despite Max Verstappen dominating this championship season, not seeing a true battle throughout the year, you definitely got to tip your hat to him, because him and the Red Bull team have executed this season perfectly by putting the best driver in the best car.
Absolutely, Kobe. And just want to go through Verstappen's 12 wins here real quick. Saudi Arabia, Imola. Sorry, just trying to pull a list up here. Saudi Arabia, Imola, Miami, Spain, Azerbaijan, Canada, France, Hungary, Belgium, the Netherlands, his home race, Italy, and Japan. And like we mentioned, a lot still to race for this season. He could well add to that total before the year's over. Ian says in the chat room, Max is just built different, honestly. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it was incredible watching him early this morning here in the States, I guess. But, I guess we can still say in today's race, just, continue to pound in, a second to his lead every single lap. I think he won by something like 26 seconds in a 28-lap race. So what does that tell you? And the first two laps were run before the restart. So, just a phenomenal performance from him, as he's had all year. And I think we have another comment from Ian in the chat room. He says, I'm just going to be honest, Ben, you look like Checo Perez. I don't know why, but you do. Well, I guess I'll take that as a compliment. I don't know. I've been meaning to get my hair cut. So maybe the hair's, coming back. I know it's come up on the show before this year as well. And there you go, a day in my life. So, yeah, you never know what's going to come up in the chat room here on these grid shows. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate our audience tonight. And next, we're going to move on to the 65th running of the Bathurst 1000 for the Repco Supercars Championship, which got off to a really chaotic start with a crash on the opening lap. There was standing water there, so turn one causes Jamie Whincup to spin, collecting other drivers and ending the day for the car shared by Zach Best and Thomas Randall. Later on during the race, we learned the standing water on track came from a busted water main. Of course, we got natural rain during a segment of the race, but nothing could have prepared the teams and the drivers, most of them co-drivers, not full-time drivers, for what was waiting for them at the start. And now we're going to bring in Adam Limmeries to join myself and Joe for this segment. So here's my first question. I'm going to start off with you, Joe. Do you think Supercars should have made an effort to address the water main, even if it meant a slightly delayed race start?
Yeah, definitely, especially with what we saw happening, where everyone trying to exit that corner as fast as possible, but not get into that water, get collected. You see three wide, they make contact, something you see in NASCAR once in a while where three wide just don't fit, and that person in the middle starts a mess. Jamie Whincup go spinning all around. We've seen this before. I recall in Nashville where we had a water main brought water onto the track. The race was red flag, then it got going. This isn't something where we should just say, oh, just avoid that big thing of water exiting the corner. This is the Bathurst 1000, one of the longest, biggest races of the year. And within the first 10 seconds of this race, we had some cars that were just damaged where they knew they were out of contention. These teams have been looking for this race. They got the co-drivers, all the practice. I think it would have been well worth if it was a 1 hour delay. Yes, I think we all have been talking about another delayed race because we saw Formula One get delayed. But for the teams and the drivers and for the fans, I think that this was just not the right call to just let them all go out there with all that standing water and then see the big crash that we did see.
Yeah, Joe, I completely agree with what you said. Before the Bathurst 1000, we had a lot of support category action. So after the last support race, Supercars could have fixed it, but they didn't, and it was kind of shocking to see. And you mentioned lap one, Jamie Whincup, who's won the Bathurst 1000 multiple times, the multiple Repco Supercars champion. He spun and didn't hit anything. That's unlike Jamie. And you had a lot and eventually the other drivers as well. I'm surprised. I was really surprised that Supercars didn't find a way to fix this. Yeah, if I was them, I would have found a way. It would have. I'm really surprised that Supercars didn't fix this. It was crazy, to see lap one a safety car. So hopefully Supercars will know what they did, and hopefully next time they'll be able to fix this.
Yeah, Adam. And when you're looking at this entire situation regarding the racetrack, if it rains, the track is wet all around, just fair game if it's just damp. But when you have standing water, as we've seen with other racing series around the world, that's something you cannot have before. And we've actually seen some supercars race, call it off early because it was raining too hard. Obviously it was fine at the time, but there was standing water right on the exit of the track where the cars would have been coming through. I think a slightly delayed race start time would have absolutely been acceptable for them to try to fix that, get the standing water off the track, address the water main issue, and we could have avoided that incident at on basically lap one of the 1,000-kilometer race. Really crazy that we were having problems there. And you brought up a good point, Adam. Yeah, when I saw Jamie Whincup going around before we knew about the water main break, I'm like, that is something we don't see from Jamie Whincup at all. He barely makes those type of mistakes. And then once we found out about the standing water, I'm like, yep, there was nothing Jamie could have done there. And it was very lucky that wasn't a race ending accident there. They were able to recover from that really early in the race, got a top 5 there, him and his co-driver, Brock Feeney. And in the early stages of the race, we saw safety car after safety car, several incidents, including a big crash caused by Zane Goddard. He tried to overtake Greg Murphy for position, went into the grass, got sideways, re-entering the track with cars coming at full speed. Dale Wood and Matt Campbell were the victims, making hard contact with Goddard ending the day for all 3 of those drivers in the garage area. The cameras on Dale Wood showing him very emotional, tears in his eyes, getting hugs all around. Co-driver Andre Heimgartner criticized the aggressive driving by his competitors. Greg Murphy was also puzzled why everyone was racing like that, acting like it was the last lap during the first 10 laps of the race of a long endurance race, 1,000 kilometers long. And Goddard ended up taking responsibility for the incident, and Supercars fined him for causing this big wreck. And something else I really wanted to mention and talk about is a scary moment. We were talking about the tractor on the track at Suzuka, but we had a safety truck on the track at Bathurst. So Brody Kostecki is coming out of the pits. Chaz Mostert's, trying to pull off the undercut, and get by him as Chaz Mostert's speeding down the straight, entering turn 1, trying to get by Kostecki, who's exiting the pits. Then we see a safety truck in front of both drivers who are trying to stay ahead of the other one. So that was a really scary incident that could have ended badly there. One happened at Suzuka, and then we had another one at Bathurst. And Adam, I'm going to start off with you on this question. Were you surprised by the chaotic crash-filled start and how long it took for the race to settle into a rhythm? Also, what are your thoughts on the safety truck being right in front of Brody Kostecki and Chaz Mostert, who were racing for position at the time?
Yeah, Scott, I was surprised, and Greg Murphy hit the nail on the head. Greg Murphy's also a former winner of the Bathurst 1000. It's a 1,000-kilometer endurance race. You can't win this race on lap 1, lap 2. You have to settle into a pace. And I was surprised with the chaos in the beginning. But once we got settled in, it was a really good pace. The sun was out, the fans were enjoying it. And regarding the safety truck, I'm surprised. The safety truck being on there when you had 2 guys battling for position.
The safety truck was a big surprise. I assume Supercars are going to look at everything that happened, hopefully take care of that, and hopefully we're not talking about that occurring again. This race, I just couldn't believe that it took so long to get one complete lap under green. The safety car right away at the end of the first lap, well, we had such a big crash. That made sense. And then just seeing that huge crash after the restart, after the chase, and then those hard hits. I when race control told all the drivers, please remember to come onto the racetrack safely. These are the best drivers in Australia racing supercars, the premier level motorsports in Australia. And like the commentator said, these drivers shouldn't be reminded that you have to come back on the track in a safe manner. I was just shocked at how this race started with so many accidents, cars, teams. This is the biggest race, one of the longest races. Okay, so you went off the track. Maybe you get stuck in the mud. You have to bring out the safety car. Worst case scenario, you lose a lap. Still, you could go on and race, potentially gain more positions as the race progresses on. But overall, this race, it was just something else. And then once it felt like we got a groove going, a rhythm in the race, finally started to feel like the normal Bathurst 1000. But the first part, I agree with the drivers calling out the other ones for being too aggressive, not thinking through, because this is such a long race. And some teams were done not even 8 laps into the race. I just thought it was amazing.
Yeah, Joe. And let our viewers know the commentators for this race were two drivers that have competed in the Bathurst 1000 before. Neil Crompton and Mark Scaife, a former winner of the Bathurst 1000. So they have experience running in this premier race. So they understand what it takes, to run 1,000 kilometers, especially Mark Scaife. I said he's a former winner of this race, so he understands what it takes, to run a 6 or 7 hour race. That is the Bathurst 1000.
Yeah, and last night on Twitter, I was talking about it's really crazy how you wait 10 months into the year for this great race to run 1,000 kilometers, and I feel really bad for Zach Best and Thomas Randall, because this is the one race you invest all of your time and money in more than any other race each year, and then you're out of it. Lap one, turn one, and yes, it was game over for them right then and there. And especially when you think about these co-drivers as well. So some of these co-drivers, there's successful supercars drivers who found a lot of success in the past Bathurst 1000 winners, past Repco Supercars championship winners out there, racing as co-drivers so they can stay a part of the event. That's one of the cool things about the Bathurst 1000, in the co-driver format that they have here that you don't see in other forms of racing. Kind of like in NASCAR, you won't see like a Tony Stewart or a Jeff Gordon, be able to hop back in just like that, where you can keep your legends of the sport like a Greg Murphy, a Craig Lowndes, drivers like that who are not as fast as they used to be, but they can still remain a part of the great race moving forward, even as they start to age. And also you have drivers who have been in supercars, lost their rides, and they want to get back in. So this is an opportunity to showcase what they can do, kind of like Lee Holdsworth did last year when he was teaming up with Chaz Mostert. That great performance helped him earn a spot back on the grid for his final full season. Also, you have young drivers as well who want to prove themselves to the supercars paddock that they deserve to be there racing full time. So if you're racing way too hard, it can cause you to miss out on some great opportunities to make a name for yourself. And of course, the race itself was dominated by the usual suspect, Triple X Red Bull Ampol Racing number 97. The final race at Bathurst for the Holden Commodore, co-driver Garth Tander still showing he has what it takes to be competitive in supercars, putting in impressive stints. Then Shane Van Gisbergen took it home, holding off Chaz Mostert to win the Great Race of Australia, the second Bathurst 1000 crown jewel win for SVG, and Tander's fifth one, tying him with Stephen Richards. Only Mark Scaife, Larry Perkins, Craig Lowndes, Jim Richards, and Peter Brock have conquered the mountain more times than Garth Tander. Was there anything the field could have done differently to beat SVG and Tander, or just utter domination by the best driver pairing and team in the series?
Pretty simple. It seemed like just the best team was out there to dominate. The best driver, Shane Van Gisbergen, dominated. Last year, he could have easily had a great finish. Of course, that tire blew a few laps ago, ruined his race. This year, even with a penalty, a 5-second penalty, I believe, after their first or second pit stop, they still overcame that. They just looked like they were in control. Chas Mostert just didn't have anything. Cam Waters' team, nothing. The show, Dick Johnson Racing, nothing. It just seemed like they were just destined to get this unless they beat themselves by pushing too hard or mechanical failure. There's a reason why Shane Van Gisbergen, we'll talk about later on, is a grid ranking world champion. He is just that good this year.
Yeah, Joe, I agree with everything you said. I don't think anybody had anything for Shane Van Gisbergen and his co-driver Garth Tander. And to see Garth Tander win 5 Bathurst 1000s is incredible. And Kobe, you mentioned some of the legends that have won this iconic race in Australia. Stephen Richards, his father, Jim Richards, Craig Lowndes, who celebrated a really cool milestone this weekend in the Bathurst 1000. Mark Scaife, and of course, the late great King of the Mountain, Peter Brock. SVG and GT got the job done. It was the last time that a Holden Commodore will win the Bathurst 1000 because next year the Gen 3 cars are coming along, and it'll be the Ford Mustang versus the Chevrolet Camaro. So what a way to go out for the Holden Commodore winning the Bathurst 1000 for the last time.
Yeah, the Holden Commodore going out on top, and that's exactly how you want to go out on top, considering the history that Holden has had in the supercars. As we were saying on the pre-race show, a lot of people are really going to miss them, but there's a lot to be excited about this new Chevrolet Camaro coming in. I'm sure in 2023, Shane Van Gisbergen is going to hope to give the Chevrolet brand some success in supercars. I'm sure he's going to continue being very successful and being one of the top drivers in the series. And I really don't think there was nothing the Phil could have done to beat SVG and Garth Tander, because they were just on a completely different planet in this race. If it wasn't for the late race safety car, I have a feeling that Shane Van Gisbergen would have won this race by a lot of seconds. It would have been an absolute dominating victory. Well, yeah, but in the end, Chas Mostert, he was right there. I can't remember which corner it was, but that was one corner where that Shane Van Gisbergen struggled in, where Mostert were game, but otherwise, that number 97, it was hooked up on the straightaway. It seemed like he had a lot more straight line speed than Mostert, and there was really nothing Chas could have done. So, best driver pairing, best team, they got the job done, and the best car here ended up winning. And a quick follow up for you, Adam, with Garth Tander winning the great race for the 5th time. Do you think he could still run full time in supercars if he really wanted to? And is he one of the best ever to race at Mount Panorama?
I think Garth Tander is just happy running the endurance races. He has a family, so he wants to spend time with his family. And is Garth Tander one of the best drivers ever at Mount Panorama? That's an easy answer. Yes. He sure is. GT, always can count on him to get the job done at Mount Panorama.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Garth Tander's already built quite an amazing legacy in supercars in general, and especially in the great race, the Bathurst 1000. And it doesn't seem like he's going to be slowing down anytime soon. So I expect him and SVG to be working together for a long time. And who knows? Could we even talk about Garth Tander potentially getting up there to that iconic number of 9 and potentially tying Peter Brock with the way things are going right now? I don't think it's out of the question that he could potentially get up there and tie Brocky.
That's true, Kobe. I'll agree with that completely.
A very exciting Bathurst 1000, and a couple of comments in the chat room want to acknowledge. Do you think F1 should do more to make racing in inclement weather more feasible? Definitely, I think this is something we all agree. Try to make it for the fans, for the teams, and for the broadcaster media, so that way we don't have these delays. Also, no animals on the track this year. Of course, last year, that was the big moment that changed the race, and Ford versus Chevy will be fun next year from the day in the life. And, of course, Adam will be back on the program later on. But one of the big things, speaking about Ford versus Chevy, throw in their Toyota. And for Toyota, what a great day at the NASCAR Cup Series Bank of America Roval race. This race was looking to be the cleanest race of the weekend until stage 3 caution for a sign that fell. Suarez actually ran over the sign, got a little sideways, but that sign was still on the track. The caution came out. Then the mayhem ensued. The biggest surprise with all the crashes and everything that had occurred with the final restart was something that had occurred right before this in the third stage with Kyle Larson in the pits. Kyle Larson, he had hit the wall exiting the infield, broke the toe link on the number 5. He was 5 laps behind. He came out on the track, but 5 laps down, he could only finish 35th place. And because of the caution for the sign, he was all of a sudden in the danger zone of being eliminated. And when Chase Briscoe on the last lap passed enough cars to get around Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell getting the win, Kyle Larson is out of the playoffs. He is eliminated and is not in the round of 8. Kyle Larson said he made mistakes that didn't position the team to win the championship this year. But here are the numbers. Kyle Larson, 2 wins this year. Okay, it's not the most. However, 11 top 5 finishes, 15 top 10 finishes. That's the third highest when it comes to top 5 and top 10 finishes out of all drivers this year. So, Ben, starting with you, does the elimination of Kyle Larson indicate the urgency to go win all season long and the strength of the playoff format? Or is this the weakness of the playoff format because the former champion is out?
Joe, Kobe, you know where I stand on this issue. I guess it depends on who you are and whether or not you like the system. If you're here for the entertainment, you're here for the chaos, then absolutely it's a strength. But the defending champion couldn't even get out of a second round. What a true underdog story for the rest of the field. Guys, Kyle Larson is third in points right now, a straight up points battle. If you tally up, I guess he fell to 4th today with his bad finish, but he entered today 3rd in a straight up points tally entering this race. His teammate Chase Elliott, I know we talked about during the summertime how there was so much parity and all these different winners, nobody can pull away. Well, now Chase Elliott has 5 wins. I mean, he's not as far ahead as Max Verstappen is on the F1 side of things, but it's looking like at this point he should be far and away the championship favorite and quite honestly should be the champion for 2022. We'll see. Obviously, he's won one at Phoenix before, so we'll see what happens when we get down there. But Kyle Larson being 3rd or 4th in points, you would think that he would be borderline making it into the championship 4. If the system worked, if the system had all these strengths, it would likely come down to him in a battle between a couple of others to get into one of those final championship 4 spots. And you could maybe say, well, maybe he comes up just short and he misses getting out of the round of 8. He didn't even get it out of the round of 12. This is a guy that was so dominant last year, has still had a very solid season this year. And he's not one of the final 8 that has a shot to win the championship, despite the fact that he's been a top 3 or top 4 driver all throughout the year. I have a problem with that. And I have a problem with a lot of the thing. I mean, Joe, you brought up the sign. I know we were talking about this backstage before we came on the air. There's a good chance that the race goes caution free to the end. We don't have any of the, spins or mayhem that we saw during the overtime finishes. I mean, why don't we just paint the signs? Why don't we just paint the sponsors on the walls and not have to worry about signs falling off or signs being glued to the walls? Or, I think that the extra money to invest in the paint would be worth more than to, have a questionable late caution for a sign that's partially out of the groove, but maybe not all the way. I don't even know where to keep going here. I mean, there's just so much that happened in the closing laps today. And Kyle Larson is now out of a championship hunt because of a weak toe link. You could say a crappy you-know-what part. I won't directly quote Kevin Harvick because I know it's a family show here. But there's so much we need to work on for next year. And I know that the playoff system is not going anywhere, but the next-gen car, it cost Kyle Larson today. And he's somebody that I think should be a championship 4 contender based on how he's run this year. If the system worked, he would be there. And he didn't even make it to the round before that. And I have a problem with that.
Yeah, Ben. There's certainly a lot of problems to go around, and if you saw Kyle Kyle Larson's post-race interview, he didn't directly blame the playoff format. He was just, I guess, taking the politically correct answer. I didn't do well enough this year to put us in the position to advance deep into the playoffs. And it really is, and it's still surprising, even with this format, seeing how Kyle Larson, yes, he's not having the type of season that we saw last year where he was the favorite to win every single week. This year, not so much. And now Kyle Larson, he's just going to be going out there for pride and try to finish the year as strong as he can. It was just a really crazy ending there. It seemed like it was going to be a relatively tame, mundane finish at the Roval, and then NASCAR got the Game 7 moment that they were looking for when they installed this playoff format, where they want to see absolute chaos and drama and try to make it must see TV, because before this caution, Christopher Bell, a race winner, he wasn't going to be able to advance, and caution comes and it shakes up everything. And I really believe that this was that Game 7 moment that we're always talking about on this program.
Something like a full season championship should not come down to the lottery of when a caution falls at the end of the race. I mean, that's the biggest problem I have here. Like you mentioned, Kobe, Christopher Bell was in trouble. The caution came out for something as seemingly innocuous as a sign falling off, and that completely changes the entire season. I mean, what more do you want me to say? It's ridiculous.
Couple of comments in the chat room. I'll go through them all. Michael Tiller asking about the F1 driver's points. As we mentioned, in the rulebook, since the race wasn't suspended, it ran the course, the time limit, full points were awarded. Ian, I believe Larson is still top 5 in the non-chase standing. That is correct. And in fact, Kyle Larson, you'll all see later, he's still in the grid ranking, one of the top 5 drivers. But Amber, so happy Kyle Larson is out. So somebody is a little bit on the more positive side. I guess maybe they like the playoffs. The longer the chase stays, the worse NASCAR gets. But what's funny is the chase ratings are always low since 2007. A day in the life. The sign falling was a sign the race was going to get crazy. And they're still coming. NASCAR TV are all for ratings. Yes, the chase ratings got lower and lower. That stays. Make it make sense.
Just to follow up on a couple of those, Ian, I don't think it's a coincidence that you look at the ratings declining and how the chase format, playoff formats continue to evolve. I think you're spot on there. And Amber, I would ask you, is that just personal bias? You're not a Kyle Larson fan, or are you a fan of the chaos of the playoffs, and it doesn't matter who it is? You like seeing the fact that an underdog is taking a playoff spot away from the defending champion. I'd like to get an answer on that. If you're still here in the chat room, maybe we can have that conversation.
It's going to be very interesting to see the response, and we encourage everyone to keep commenting in the chat room as we enjoy listening to you all. Makes the show more fun to hear from you. One team, I don't know if Amber or others are happy, but I know there's a bunch of fans unhappy to see the heartbreak for Trackhouse Racing. Daniel Suarez having a power steering issue. He dropped back. I have to be honest, that was just so painful. You could hear Daniel Suarez screaming, just frustrated. He could only do so much without power steering. Going a lap down, that just ruined his race. That's a rough way to go out. Austin Cindric, he was poised to advance with all the craziness, but then he got spun in that backstretch chicane. He was done for. Of course, Bowman out with concussion-like symptoms, so he wasn't even able to contend to try to move on into the next round. But William Byron, he was given 25 points back after he won his appeal. So had he not gotten that 25 valuable points, he probably would have been out the playoffs instead of Kyle Larson. So Kobe, I got to ask you, now that Byron went from essentially being below the cut line to above the cut line, advances instead of Kyle Larson, who many see as one of the top 2 drivers in Hendrick Motorsports, do you think William Byron could fill the void of Kyle Larson not there? Because right now, he's 3 points above the cut line in the round of 8.
And Joe, before I answer your question, I wanted to respond to something Ben said about this being a family program. I want all our viewers to know that that we're rated G for a Grid Network. And to answer your question, in regards to William Byron, is obviously going to be him and Chase Elliott who's going to have to pull the weight. But if I'm William Byron, I'm actually very excited about the round of 8 coming up and the tracks that you have in that round. I wouldn't really be excited for Las Vegas, though, coming up next weekend, because Las Vegas, looking at William Byron's stats, it's been up and down. Sometimes he'll run well, sometimes he doesn't. But coming to Homestead, Martinsville, two tracks that he's won at, I would be really, really excited, because I think William Byron can definitely get the job done at those tracks and go race for a NASCAR Cup Series championship. So not next week, but I would strongly consider William Byron for pick a winner at Homestead and Martinsville.
Well, on that note, Kobe, Grid Live Encore is rated E for everyone, so we'll keep with a similar theme there, or maybe E10. You do see a little bit more of a sassy side of me sometimes in the Encore show, so maybe we'll go with the E10 rating for that one. But yes, we do try to keep it, so the families can enjoy our Grid Network programming here. In terms of William Byron, I'll just bring up who won Martinsville in the spring. With the way this format works, all you have to do is win one of these three races. You punch your ticket to the championship 4. William Byron won at Martinsville earlier this year. There's no reason to doubt why he might be able to do it again. And there you go. That's all Byron really needs to be focused on. And I think there's a couple of other tracks in the round, obviously, that the way things have been going this year with the amount of parity we've seen. I think any one of the 8 drivers we still have here could find their way in the championship 4, and then of course win the championship at Phoenix. And Byron is certainly no exception to that.
Championship 4, the parity level of the championship 8 going into this round of 8, going into hopefully the championship 4. I think the parity level is going to continue. William Byron, Homestead, that's a track I think he could win at. I wouldn't count him out in Las Vegas yet, but we'll see what happens, because Alex Bowman got the win there. I can see William Byron trying to capitalize, get some good notes from there. A couple of comments from the chat room. Michael Tiller, sorry for the weather-affected Japan race. Congrats to Max Verstappen on his second title. Ian, honestly, Max was going to still get the championship even he did not win Japan. There is Coda. And then Amber loves Encore, and of course, Encore every Monday. Tomorrow, Casey Campbell, who was in the chat room, he'll be recapping the Arca Menard Series race at Toledo. One of the things, of course, we're talking about the championship, the playoffs here. Christopher Bell, he looked to be out coming into this race because he had a rough round of 12. But we saw him in that first round. He was one of the favorites. He was the first one to mathematically clinch himself. The chaos of the Roval, as some drivers stayed out, he made the pit, got the fresh tires, got to the front. He was confident he could have caught Kevin Harvick without the caution. The caution, of course, brought him up closer. He got around Harvick, got the win. Overall, Bell, considering how he looked so strong in that round of 16, do you think he is again a favorite to get into the championship 4?
He could be. It depends on whether or not he's hot or cold. He's been both this year at various points. He was obviously flaming hot in the first round, or the round of 16 rather, with 3 consecutive top 5s. And then just pulling up the season results here, it looks like 34th at Texas, 17th at Talladega, which put him essentially in a must-win situation today at the Charlotte Roval, which of course he ended up doing. So, again, all it takes is a win, and it advances you to the next round. Christopher Bell, if he can take this momentum and take another win in any one of the next 3 races, that's all he needs to do. But even then, there will be at least one spot open for somebody to point their way in. Christopher Bell, if he has some strong runs, the point margins are razor thin right now, pretty much all up and down the board. He could certainly be one of them to punch his ticket that way as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say, how about Toyota? Consider how they've run on the road courses this year. I believe on the broadcast I said entering the Charlotte Roval, they only had like 2 top 5s on road courses this year, and all the road courses that we have on the schedule. And then again, if it wasn't for the late race caution, it would have been another loss for Toyota on a road course. But I'm sure they have to be very proud of the progress that they've been able to make to be able to put three Toyotas in the top 10 at the end, with Bell winning the race, Kyle Busch finishing 3rd, and Bubba Wallace taking a 7th place finish. And Bubba Wallace, he doesn't even like road courses; those are his worst tracks. And end up getting a strong finish there. Yeah, but if I'm Toyota, I certainly have to be very pleased with how the Charlotte Roval race went. As for Christopher Bell, I think he could potentially get into the championship 4. But Ben, you brought up a good point. In a way, Christopher Bell reminds me of Supercars driver Cam Waters. One race weekend, he's hot and he's running extremely well. and then and then on another week it's not going well at all. I guess it's going to depend on what Christopher Bell shows up to the round of 8 and can potentially lock himself into the championship 4.
Christopher Bell, like you said, seems he's really hot or not. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens at Vegas, at Homestead, and Martinsville. This round, we saw Texas, which brought a lot of negative momentum, a lot of negative news. Talladega, the race itself, good day for NASCAR. And then today, a chaotic ending shakeup of the championship picture for the round of 8. Kobe, do you feel the craziness of the 2022 playoffs will calm down with the next round?
Uh, Joe, do you see what the cutoff race is once again? Martinsville, I absolutely do not expect this to calm down at all. It could be calm next week at Vegas, Homestead, but the one race circled on my calendar is Martinsville. I think it could be really crazy. All year long, the drivers have been building a list of drivers they like to get payback at. I have a feeling that Martinsville is going to be the one place where we could see some payback take place. You know, Ross Chastain has a long list of enemies. If Ross has an opportunity to go race for a championship, enter in Martinsville, I'm sure a lot of the drivers who he's really upset this year will use that as an opportunity to get him back for how he's been racing them all year long, or if you have a driver in the round of 8 uh, who can't mathematically get into the next round and they're in a must-win situation, they're running second place. You know what they're gonna do on the final lap, final corner? They're gonna use the bumper, move somebody up the hill, slamming doors, or end up just wrecking somebody to get into the championship 4. So to sum it up, no, I don't think the craziness is gonna stop at all. I think it's only beginning.
Ditto. I mean, just look at Martinsville. Look at what's happened the last couple of years. Kobe, like you said, I think Vegas and Homestead, it might calm down a little bit. I think, it's a little bit more ill-advised to try to get retaliation at a mile and a half, although we have seen it before. But Ross Chastain is still in the championship fight, for crying out loud. I mean, how many drivers have him on their list that they'd like to get some payback with? I think Martinsville, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a relatively clean, straightforward race, and the 4 most deserving drivers make it to the championship 4 and fight for a title at Phoenix next month. But unfortunately, I think you're just going to see more complete chaos and mayhem, and we'll probably be having a very similar conversation to the one we had about 20 minutes ago.
And before we go to the next question from Ian, who will get Joe Gibbs Racing their 200th win? Of course, they got 199 today with Christopher Bell. Ben, starting with you, who do you think could get number 200? And will it happen this year?
It might happen this year. We still have a couple of their drivers in the championship fight. I don't know. I mean, Kyle Busch, has had a very up and down year himself, but I'm reminded of 2020, when he was trying to keep his streak alive and he, just randomly won the Texas race, well after he was eliminated in the playoffs. And I suppose he could do something like that again. It's kind of crazy. If he hadn't backed into one, as he might say, at the Bristol Dirt Race, we'd be talking about that streak potentially coming to an end again this year. But I don't know. I guess just based on the championship fight as it is right now, I would probably say Denny Hamlin is the most likely to get Gibbs their 200th win.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you. I think it's probably gonna be Denny Hamlin as well. But how fitting would it be if Kyle Busch got Joe Gibbs Racing that 200 win as he leads the organization at the end of the year, moving over to Richard Childress Racing in 2023?
Be fitting because they got him his 200th win across all top 3 series as well.
I think I'm gonna go with Christopher Bell. I think the momentum is going to carry. I think he's going to be really strong at Homestead, at Las Vegas. If he doesn't get it done there, then I could see Denny Hamlin at Martinsville, unless he gets pushed off to the side like what happened last year, and hopefully we don't see a repeat of that post-victory celebration interrupted by Denny Hamlin and FedEx moment. But NASCAR definitely just won the races in the Grid Ranking World Championship, and that championship has already been clinched.
That's right, Joe. The 2022 Grid Ranking World Championship is officially clinched. Shane Van Gisbergen won the Bathurst 1000 and put himself ahead of Verstappen and Rovanpera, the last 2 that could have won the Grid Ranking Championship this year. SVG to date has 19 wins, 24 podiums, 26 top 5s, and 27 top 10 finishes in 30 races. He is the 5th racer to claim the grid ranking, joining Martin Truex Jr. in 2017, Marc Marquez in 2018 and 19, Lewis Hamilton in 2020, and Sebastian Ogier last year in 2021, who SVG lost the lead to at this race this time last year. Adam Lemeris joins us again, our Supercars expert. Good to see you, Adam. So SVG is having a historically dominant season. He won the Bathurst 1000, is likely to clinch the Supercars championship this year. And he even scored a top 10 in podium in his WRC debut. Plus, he's rumored to be in line for a Project 91 NASCAR outing next year in 2023. So at 33 years old, does he have anything left to prove in Supercars? And if not, should he maybe go and look around at another series to compete in like his fellow countryman, Scott McLaughlin?
Scott, SVG has nothing more to prove. What he's done this year is incredible. 19 wins. That beats Scott McLaughlin's record of 18 wins. And when Scott McLaughlin did it, he broke the record of Craig Lowndes, and nobody thought Craig Lowndes' record would be beaten. SVG this year has been so dominant. His stats are amazing, incredible. And it's sad to see that Supercars don't get coverage, TV coverage here in the United States. The only way to watch Supercars is either through YouTube on Supercars Superview or Motor Trend on Demand. And where could SVG race? Well, you mentioned the Chicago Street Race, Ben. If the Supercars schedule next year doesn't conflict, I could see SVG running in NASCAR. I mean, we saw what Marcus Ambrose did, coming over from Supercars. He ran in the Truck Series, in the Xfinity Series, and then in the Cup Series. So that could be doable in one more series. How about we see SVG and Scott McLaughlin go wheel to wheel in the NTT IndyCar Series? Why not? I mean, two of the most incredible supercar drivers going at it over here in the United States on against some of the best open wheel drivers in the world. Why not?
Well, I have a question here that I'll pass on to you from A Day in My Life. Can he still race even if the schedule conflicts?
As long as the 2023 Supercar schedule has not been announced yet, but if it doesn't conflict with the Chicago Street Race, SV, as long as if SVG is in the Project 91 car for Team Trackhouse, he'll be there. It's called Justin Marks. Justin Marks, he loves them. He has incredible talent. Even Parker Kligerman said that SVG is a legend. So it's coming from a driver like Parker Kligerman saying Jamin Gisbergen is a legend. That's saying something.
Well, I would hope SVG wouldn't just limit himself to the Chicago Street Course. If there's another road course that maybe doesn't conflict with the schedule, or we'll see if Chicago works out as well, I would hope he could keep his options open. And I hope Project 91 does give him that call, because I think he could really do well over here in a one-off. Now, SVG can still set the record for the highest scored grid ranking world champion. Lewis Hamilton currently has that record with a 20.25. SVG did set the record for the earliest clinched grid ranking world championship. The prior record was November 18th in 2018 after NASCAR's Ford EcoBoost 400 at Miami. And for the second time, there was only ever one lead change in the grid ranking throughout the season. The last time that happened was in 2019. So, Kobe, you've been following Supercars more recently and following major motorsports for a long time. Do you believe SVG's 2022 season will go down in history as one of the greatest motorsports seasons ever?
And Ben, before I answer that question, I actually want to answer Dan the last question as well. Can Shane Van Gisbergen still race Chicago? The schedule conflicts, and I can even argue that assuming that Red Bull Ampol Racing continues to dominate next year. I know sometimes, when you're shifting over regulations, sometimes you'll see the team that's been dominating, it'll be closer, or they may take a step back, like we've seen with the Mercedes this year. If SVG keeps the same form in their new Chevrolet Camaro next year is extremely fast, even if there's a supercars race on the same weekend as the Chicago street course, I could argue SVG could really skip the entire race weekend, lose those points, and still win the championship at the end of the year because Shane Van Gisbergen is that good. So even if there is a scheduling conflict, if Red Bull and Bull Racing Triple Eight, if they feel confident that SVG can still remain in the championship hunt, missing an entire weekend of points, I think they would actually let him go run the Chicago street course race. And answer your question, Ben, I think Shane Van Gisbergen's season has been one of the most dominant motorsport seasons that I've ever seen during my time following motorsports, from the time when I was just a fan till now as a motorsports journalist. You don't see this level of domination all the time, and that's why in the past programs I've always preached that, well, yeah, it might not be super exciting because SVG is like a Sharpie win every single week, where it's almost a guarantee that he's going to win. But I think that this is a time where we need to appreciate the greatness that we've seen in 2022, because there may come a time, where we won't see this level of performance ever again, because 2023, when the new regulations come around, it might be a lot closer. Might see a lot more drivers who have a shot to take down SVG as the champion, because right now it's a Shane Van Gisbergen world and we're just living in it.
Absolutely. And now we'll bring Joe and Adam back in. It's time for the one shining moment to close the show.
One shining moment. Joe, definitely encourage everyone in the chat room, share what's your one shining moment as well. Was it something from Formula One? Was it something from Supercars, NASCAR, or another series that we don't cover but a feel-good story? This is the time to share it. Adam, what's your grid one shining moment?
Oh, that's easy, Joe. It's got to go to Shane Van Gisbergen and Gartander winning the Repco Bathurst 1000. It was SVG's second Peter Brock Trophy. It was Gartander's fifth Peter Brock Trophy. SVG proved that in order to be the best, you got to beat the best. No one could beat that number 97 Red Bull Ampul Holden Commodore down at Bathurst. The last ever win for the Holden Commodore at Mount Panorama. So for me, I got to give it to Shane Van Gisbergen and Gartander winning the Repco Bathurst 1000.
It's admittedly kind of tough for me to come up with one this weekend. I know we had some safety concerns during the F1 race, and obviously more mismanagement, if you will. And then obviously the NASCAR Cup race had me feeling down as well. But I will give a shining moment to AJ Allmendinger, who signed a deal to return to the Cup Series full-time with Colleague this week and went out and backed that up with a win in the Xfinity race, which we'll talk about a lot more on the Encore show tomorrow, of course, and another top 5 in the Cup Series race today as well. A great weekend for him, and we'll see what he can do in 2023. But as for this weekend right now, on the heels of that announcement, that is my one shining moment.
Yeah, my one shining moment is similar to yours, Ben, but more so Colleague racing as a whole. AJ Allmendinger getting that fourth consecutive Xfinity win at the Charlotte Roval, incredible domination. I even said yesterday that the Charlotte Roval is AJ Allmendinger's house. He's been so good, and it was, certainly had a great race today, and another strong run by his teammate Justin Haley. If I'm Matt Colleague, Chris Rice right now, I'm very excited for 2023 because today both cars showed the potential, what they can do in the future. It seemed like Justin Haley is really starting to get the hang of the NASCAR Cup Series now. Experienced Cup veteran like AJ Allmendinger to help improve your Cup program. Try to get both cars running better and more competitive, making changes over the offseason so you can go faster in 2023. I think Colleague racing, this race we saw today, is just an indication of what's to come in their future in NASCAR's top series.
And before I share mine, and tell you my one shining moment has to be Vettel finishing P6 to become driver of the day in his final Japanese Grand Prix. And he said he loves that track. He would love to come out of retirement just to do that one race. For me, my grid, one shining moment has to go to Christopher Bell getting in the win. And I think this sends a statement because when we think about Joe Gibbs racing, we think about Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch. They're the two that we anticipate to go for championships year after year. Now I feel this is the opportunity for Christopher to say, hey, he is one of the leaders of Joe Gibbs racing. He could go out there and win championships. He's been known for being really, really good or just nowhere. If he could continue this positive momentum from today's win, carry that same momentum that he had in the first round of 16, I could see him being in the championship 4 And then we'll be talking about Kyle Busch. Yeah, he may be out of the picture with Joe Gibbs Racing, but Christopher Bell is there and trying to take that number 20, which Tony Stewart took to a championship, take that to another championship as well. And we are all out of time. We want to thank everyone for watching. Be sure to follow us on social media all week long, including for our Pick a Winner game. It is really getting close for the championship there. And of course, big thank you to Colin DeShow, Mark and Robin for investing in the Grid Network. You too can invest. Link in the video description, or you can subscribe to our one-time contribution, Buy Me a Coffee. That's what Amber, and Zach have done. You do a one-time contribution. You could do more if you want to in the future, but even just one, very much appreciated. And of course, public.com. Use that referral code, GridNet, for free stock from public.com. They got information to learn about investing in the stock market, including daily podcasts, webinars, and the opportunity to make new friends or find your existing friends on public.com. And once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. For Adam Lemeries, Ben Schneider, Kobe Lammers from the Podium Finish, I'm Joe San Diego. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.